Hello, this is Pastor Colleen with Melbourne and Hinton United Methodist Churches, and this is our at-home Good Friday service for 2020. If you have candles ready at home, go ahead and light them now. You can see that we need 6 candles for this time together. A thank you to the North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church for this at-home liturgy called For an Awkward Time. Holy Week is a story of presence found only through absence, a story of harsh nails and painful wounds. On Good Friday, we sit in a growing darkness with all of the absence and loneliness this story brings as the shadows grow longer in us. Since the 12th century, Christians have gathered this night to let the shadows grow long in our hearts and minds, revealing to us the darkest places in each of us, the shadows of betrayal and despair, the shadows of accusation and shame. At the center of this night is a candle, a light that gets weaker and weaker with each mumbled word, each sorrowful whisper. And as we hear the passion and as the light grows dimmer, we see the power of silence and darkness, revealing the heart of God. Please join with me now in an attitude of prayer and repeat after me. On this solemn evening, come, Holy Spirit, that we might be comforted by your presence, and that our reading of this story might be filled with wisdom, compassion, and understanding. Amen. Our readings tonight begin in Matthew chapter 26, verse 20. The shadow of betrayal. That evening he took his place at the table with the 12 disciples. As they were eating, he said, "I assure you that one of you will betray me." Deeply saddened, each one said to him, "I'm not the one, am I, Lord?" He replied, "The one who will betray me is the one who dips his hand with me into this bowl. The human one goes to his death just as it is written about him, but how terrible it is for that person who betrays the human one. It would have been better for him if he had never been born." Now Judas, who would betray him, replied, "It's not me, is it, Rabbi?" Jesus answered, "You said it." Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. In this silence, reflect in this awkward season how you are seeing the shadow of betrayal and abandonment in your life. Is it becoming more clear? And now starting in chapter 26, verse 36, the shadow of spiritual agony. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He said to the disciples, "Stay here while I go and pray over there." When he took Peter and Zebedee's 2 sons, he began to feel sad and anxious. Then he said to them, "I'm very sad. It's as if I'm dying. Stay here and keep alert with me." Then he went a short distance farther and fell on his face and prayed, "My Father, if it's possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want." Then he came back to the disciples and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, "Couldn't you stay alert 1 hour with me?" Stay alert and pray so that you won't give in to temptation. The spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak." A second time he went away and prayed, "My Father, if it's not possible that this cup be taken away unless I drink it, then let it be what you want." Again he came and found them sleeping. Their eyes were heavy with sleep, but he left them and again went and prayed the same words for the third time. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Will you sleep and rest all night? Look, the time has come for the human one to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. Look, here comes my betrayer." While Jesus was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, came. With him was a large crowd carrying swords and clubs. They had been sent by the chief priests and elders of the people. His betrayer had given them a sign, "Arrest the man I kiss." Just then he came to Jesus and said, "Hello, Rabbi." Then he kissed him. But Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." Then they came and grabbed Jesus and arrested him. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. As the shadows grow, reflect in the silence. In this awkward season, how are you seeing the shadow of spiritual anguish in your life more clearly? And now we continue with Matthew 26, starting in verse 69, the shadow of denial. Meanwhile, Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant woman came and said to him, "You were also with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it in front of all of them, saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." When he went over to the gate, another woman saw him and said to those who were there, "This man was with Jesus, the man from Nazareth." With a solemn pledge, he denied it again, saying, "I don't know the man." A short time later, those standing there came and said to Peter, "You must be one of them. The way you talk gives you away." Then he cursed and swore, "I don't know the man." At that very moment, the rooster crowed. Peter remembered Jesus' words, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and cried uncontrollably. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. In this awkward season, how are you seeing the shadow of denial in your life more clearly? Continuing in Matthew 27, verses 11 through 14 and 20 through 29, the shadow of accusation. Jesus was brought before the governor, and the governor said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus replied, "That's what you say." But he didn't answer when the chief priests and elders accused him. Then Pilate said, "Don't you hear the testimony they bring against you?" But he didn't answer, not even a single word. The governor was greatly amazed. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and kill Jesus. The governor said, "Which of the 2 do you want me to release to you?" "Barabbas!" Pilate said. "Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" "Crucify him!" "Why? What wrong has he done?" They shouted even louder, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere and that a riot was starting, so he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I'm innocent of this man's blood. It's your problem." All the people replied, "Let his blood be on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus whipped, then handed him over to be crucified. The governor's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's house, and they gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put on a red military coat. They twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They put a stick in his right hand. Then they bowed down in front of him and mocked him, saying, "Hey, King of the Jews." Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. As the shadows grow, reflect in the silence. In this awkward season, how are you seeing the shadow of blame in your life more clearly? And now to Matthew 27, verse 31. The shadow of humiliation. When they finished mocking him, they stripped him of the military coat and put his own clothes back on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they found Simon, a man from Cyrene. They forced him to carry his cross. When they came to a place called Golgotha, which means skull place, they gave Jesus wine mixed with vinegar to drink. But after tasting it, he didn't want to drink it. After they crucified him, they divided up his clothes among them by drawing lots. They sat there guarding him. They placed above his head the charge against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." They crucified him with two outlaws, one on his right side and one on his left. Those who were walking by insulted Jesus, shaking their heads and saying, "So you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, were you? Save yourself. If you are God's son, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with their legal experts and the elders, were making fun of him. "He saved others, but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel, so let him come down from the cross now. Then we'll believe in him. He trusts in God, so let God deliver him now if he wants to." Jesus said, "I'm God's son." Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. The shadows grow, and in this awkward season, how are you seeing the shadow of shame in your life more clearly? And now to Matthew 27, verse 45, the shadow of death. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, the whole earth was dark. At about 3, Jesus cried out with a loud shout, my God, why have you left me?" After hearing him, some standing there said, "He's calling Elijah." One of them ran over, took a sponge full of vinegar and put it on a pole. He offered it to Jesus to drink, but the rest of them said, "Let's see if Elijah will come and save him." Again, Jesus cried out with a loud shout. Then he died. Look, the curtain of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised. After Jesus' resurrection, they came out of their graves and went into the holy city, where they appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and what had just happened, they were filled with awe and said, "This was certainly God's Son." As the shadows grow deepest, reflect in the silence. In this truly awkward season, how are you seeing the shadow of death in your life more clearly? Now to chapter 27, verse 57, the shadow of burial. That evening, a man named Joseph came. He was a rich man from Arimathea who had become a disciple of Jesus. He came to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate gave him permission to take it. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had carved out of the rock. After, he rolled a large stone at the door of the tomb, and he went away. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they pierced him in the side? Were you there when the sun refused to shine? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? In this awkward season, what needs to be buried in your life so that you might experience what God is doing more fully? This concludes our Good Friday service. Go in peace. May Jesus Christ, who for our sake became obedient unto death, even death on a cross, keep you and strengthen you this night and forever. Amen.